Hey everyone, my name is Jared Scott. I'm the discipleship pastor here at Lake Church in Arlington. This is Week's Worth. So as we go through the book of Genesis, I have a lot of questions that I'd like to share and ask with you over the next few weeks, just about where are we going, why do we do what we do, and does it actually matter? One of the things I have noticed in life, even though I'm still fairly young, I'm old enough to really realize this, that many wonderful and good things I can become numb to very quickly. And I see so often within the church that the numbness towards the goodness of God and towards the Bible and towards His Word comes at a very quick time rate, rather than how we respond in the midst of, say, difficulty or adversity, where we hold on to that anger, we hold on to that frustration, and we, like the nation of Israel that we see so often in the Old Testament, get so angry and frustrated. So today, my question for you guys at home is, does creation make a difference? When you think of creation, when we go through Genesis 1 and 2, the very beginning of this whole wonderful and beautiful story that we know as God's story to us, His creation, do you and I sit in awe of what God has done? You know, we can go through the creation story that many people have heard a ton, but we'll get into the real thick of it. Do you wonder about the power that God went from nothing and chaos to just saying creation, using His voice, using words? The phrase ex nihilo means out of nothing. And so God created order out of chaos, and out of nothing, He spoke things to existence. And I think the power with that and the realization of no matter where we want to go with it is that there is this created being or a non-created being who God is. He always was, always will be, and always is currently. His no end and no beginning, that He took chaos and created order. That blows my mind, because when you look at just how creation works, and if things were just slightly different, just slightly, it'd be even more chaotic. We'd either freeze or we'd burn. And the beauty of what God is that He made man, you and I, in His image with, and I think this is the coolest thing, with His own hands. Right? Out of the dirt, God created Adam. This is the first time we see God pause. Instead of creating something with His voice, He creates something with His hands. And I think that should send us into such a joyful thought process and a joyful heart and a joyful life to realize you and I are separate and different than the rest of creation. I love my dog, Sadie. Sadie is the best dog. She's a Labradoodle, beautiful coat, super obedient, super loving. She's great with my kids, but at the end of the day, she is just a dog. And though I love her to death, and I believe that my dog loves me, and when she goes, I will bawl my eyes out, we are not on the same playing field. I should take care of my dog. I should take care of the world around me. I should take care of my home. But you and I, as humans, were created to be something special. And by God's own hand, you and I are made perfectly. Now, sin does enter the world, and we're not here yet in Genesis 1 and 2. But in the midst of you and I were made for perfection, and we were made for eternity, I think there's this beautiful thing of you and I can just see God closer and closer as we examine one another. And I think another cool thing when you read through Genesis 1 and 2 is you get to see some things established way before sin or evil enters the world. One, that being work, right? God made Adam and Eve and gave them responsibility to cultivate the ground, to name the animals, and a few other things, to be fruitful and multiply. And I think that's such a cool thing, that work gives us purpose, and that is beautiful. That was not a state of sin when work was created, but in perfection from the very beginning, you and I were created to work. Secondly, the establishment of marriage is brought before sin enters the world. Man and woman were created to engage with one another in perfection and holy matrimony. And I think that's a powerful thing. Being in 2025 and just the chaos that it is, and the questions we have between sexuality and man and woman and all the questions we have. But from the beginning of time, God created man and woman to be with one another intimately, to enjoy one another, to benefit one another, to carry one another. And so before sin and evil came, marriage was made to even remind us more of who God is. And so what I would like for you to think today as we go out into our world and we think about Genesis 1, 2 and creation, does being made in the image of God change how I think about myself and about other people, right? We talk about self-image, and it's all our self-respect and self-esteem. Where is that self-esteem found? And I think the understanding of being made in the image of God in perfection by his hand should encourage us all the more. We get wrapped up in the what can I do to chisel myself or to make myself better, and we just depend more and more on us, and we think about how can I get ahead? How can I look better? We don't enjoy what God created us to be because we want to be somebody else. We see more of our destructive nature come out. Secondly, when we think about work, pre-sin, you and I were created to work. Do we rejoice in the purposes that God has given us? Again, beginning of time, God created you with a purpose to serve, to work, to cultivate, to create, to, again, not only to look like him, but to function and act like him. God will display his grace, his mercy, his joy, his love, his creativity, as we see in creation, and created you and I to do the same thing. Now, on the other side of this camera is Liam, my wonderful friend who is recording this and editing this, and he is creative, much more creative than I am. But that's because God built him to create and to think abstractly and to make sense out of chaos through arts. Now, I love building furniture, and that is the way I create. I love taking just a random piece of wood off a tree and making it into a table or a cutting board or a toy for my children. Some of you may like that with design or with photography. You can do that in so many different ways, but we're created with purpose to create and to innovate and to love. In Christianity, we as Christians should be on the forefront of that, not in the back, right? I think one of my buddies who does a podcast talked about just a couple of weeks ago, why does Christian art stink? I'll use that word. And should Christian films and art be cheesy? No, it should be good and inspiring and put people in awe, because you and I, made in the image of God, should create how he created and put our best foot forward and put in that effort. And lastly, do you view marriage in its rightful place? Now, I'm not one of those people who think everyone should be married. I would assume most people will be throughout life, and I can give biblical arguments for that, but not to hold marriage on this unrealistic pedestal, which we often do, right? I went to a private Christian university, and the phrase there was ring by spring. And honestly, it puts such an unhealthy view of what marriage actually is. But do we look at marriage as a way of worship? Intently, right? Pre-sin, that was what marriage was for, to be a celebration, and it still is, to be a celebration and a representation of who God and his character is, that he created us as separate, but to be one, just as he is three in one with the Trinity. So I think as we go through Genesis, asking these types of questions is really what we should be asking, and we should spur us on to find joy in what God has created and given us to do, not to complain about our work, not to complain about our marriage, not to complain about who we are as human beings, but to recognize each one of those things as gifts from God with real intent that was established way before sin had ever entered this world. Thanks, guys, for listening. I hope you enjoyed what you heard today. And we're going to continue doing this. So we as a church are going through the entire Bible. So we will do an episode on at least 1 or 2 chapters a week. So we hope that you like, subscribe, share this with people who may benefit from you. as we continue our journey through the Bible for the next 3 years, and hopefully get your week's worth.